Welcome to Facing the Canon. My guest on the programme is Tim Jupp, founder and director of Big Church Festival. Tim, welcome to Facing the Canon.
Great to be here with you.
I really appreciate it. Well, there's a lot to your story. Let's start at the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in East Sussex, in Eastbourne. Always lived on the coast. And when I was 13, we crossed the border to West Sussex. So that's where I still am now.
And that's where you still are now?
In a little one-horse seaside town called Littlehampton.
And you grew up in a Christian environment, family?
Yep, I had Christian parents and I've got a brother and a sister. We grew up in church, good old Baptist people back in the day. And then we moved to a church when I was a teenager in the kind of early days of, I guess, renewal back in the UK. I mean, you'll remember that.
Yes, I do.
As much as me. It was an exciting time and people exploring what it meant to be filled with the Holy Spirit and all that and the gifts of the Spirit. So it was a great time to be alive.
I love it that I seem to remember that you used to skip school and go to the church so that you can practice the piano.
Oh, I did, yeah. I was terrible academically. I partly didn't like studying, but I went to a church and they had this beautiful Steinway piano. And in the daytime, no one was in there. And, I just kind of had a run of the place and failed all my A-levels miserably because I never really attended the lessons because I was too busy doing music. I felt, even at that age, kind of called to be involved in what music looked like, but we didn't really know in the church context in those days what that was because no one did that for a living or anything like that.
No, but then after that, you joined Ishmael.
I did,
Oh,
yes.
What an incredible man.
Yeah, so I spent probably about 11 or 12 years going around the country. Actually, I became, as well as playing with this tiny little band, there was only 3 of us, and we were doing all these family events, called them praise parties. Yes. I was also the driver.
Yes, so everything.
Yes, driver with no sat-nav and often stopping off at call boxes, I remember. Ish would jump out and phone the organiser and try and find out how to get us there. We were always getting lost all over the country, but we did that for many years.
How would you describe Ishmael?
Larger than life, I would say.
Definitely.
But he was a good friend. He was actually my best man at my wedding back in 1990, so we still stay in touch.
But a unique ministry for a particular season. And it really connected and engaged with children.
It did, with children and families, together. And I mean, a lot of the work we did in those days, we would be at Spring Harvest every year and we led the kids' work at Spring Harvest. And out of that, I think people invited him to go and visit their churches around the UK. And we'd just go back year after year and it was great fun.
And then you set up a music studio after that.
Yeah, I did that because we were recording so many records for children.
Yeah.
And so that was with Ishmael and later on with Kingsway. And I remember did a whole series of records called Songs of Fellowship for Kids. And so instead of going to a studio, we thought, well, we might as well just buy the gear and make our own little studio. So I built a little studio. And then I was a friend of mine who was working in another studio back in Eastbourne called ICC Studios. His name was Martin Smith. He was a YTS boy. He was about 18, 19 years old on £25 a week from the government. But we used to work on these records together. And in the end, Martin and I became good friends. He left Eastbourne, came over and joined me. We ran our studio together for a few years on the South Coast. And we used to record really a lot of the UK worship albums back in those days.
Didn't you do Matt Redman and Graham Kendrick?
Yeah, Matt Redman's first 2 records. Yeah, Graham used to come. All these people would come. And so we've known Matt since...
Noel Richards.
Yeah, I mean, you're really going back now. But
yes, but it was like there's a whole generation of worship
and
leaders.
and a lot of the live records we did too, events like Stoneleigh, New Wine, Grapevine, those kind of Bible Week. They wanted a recording of their worship, so we used to take a machine out, record them at the events and finish them off in the studio. So that was, we did that together for a little while.
And then Delirious came together. What is the story about how Delirious came together?
Well, Martin had moved over and we started a youth event, a worship event, and that back in Littlehampton. We had probably 30 young people in our youth group. We invited all the young people from all the youth groups in the area, which doubled it to about 60. So we thought revival had happened.
Yes.
60 young people turned up for a night of worship. But within about a year and a half, that had grown to 1,300 young people coming every month. And then we got invited to plant the same event along the south coast. We did one in Portsmouth, one in Southampton, and we were leading worship for, I think, over 3,000 young people every month in those three places. And at the end of every summer term, we used to say to everyone, hey, we're going to do something on the beach. And the local council in our town in Littlehampton let us drive these flatbed trucks onto the piece of grass on the front, and over 10,000 people used to come. And I know that because my father-in-law stood at the back with his old SLR camera, took photos of the crowd, and then he would blow up the photos, stick them on his office wall. He was the church pastor at the time, and he did a little dot in everyone's head and counted everyone, because we didn't know what 10,000 people looked like in those days. We had no idea. And he was like, oh, there's 10,000 here. And people and Channel 4 came and made a documentary about what was going on. But it was a really, I would say, really organic move of God.
It was a move of God.
And it was exciting. And then out of that, Martin and some of the others started writing songs really for that group of young people for worship. And we sang those songs, we recorded them on cassettes. And then the cassettes, well, seemed to travel. And people eventually all over the world got hold of those songs.
And I mean, Delirious. I mean, I had the great opportunity of working with you a couple of times during that season, and it was remarkable. I mean, the Lord used you in so many countries of the world. As you look back, what were some of the highlights for you? You were the keyboard player.
I was the keyboard player, yeah.
What were some of the highlights of where you went as, I want to say as a group, Delirious, but you were in effect evangelists.
Oh, we were really, yeah. We were musical missionaries,
You
I would
were,
say, in that sense. And we did get invited all over the place. I mean, there's so many, we love the big things we did. We loved the small things we did. I think we loved it because we felt, all of us collectively, a sense of calling. And I think we felt like God had really called us. And so there's nothing greater than waking up in the morning, going off doing what you feel you're called to do. I think that's what was exciting. So it had a lot of vision in it. And
I think, Tim, we had crossed paths during that time. I was always very impressed that you weren't entertainers. To me, you never came across as entertainers, but you came across as worshippers.
Yeah, and I think we always felt like those 5 guys from the local church.
Yes.
The whole time, to be honest. It never felt like that. And I think half the time we couldn't believe where we would find ourselves. The great thing about music, and particularly worship, it does transcend all those things where maybe sometimes with the preacher, they get boxed in a little bit more.
Yeah.
But with the music, you really can find yourself.
Sure.
In all those denominations, all those expressions of church. And I think out of that, I really got to love that thing of church and seeing, wow, this is so diverse. From the most crazy Pentecostal type of things that we went to, maybe sometimes in places like South America or Asia like that. And then we did,
Didn't you go to Morocco or somewhere like that?
Yeah, we did once, yeah.
And that was a completely different gathering of people.
Yeah, that was a kind of strange event. And we ended up having dinner at the King of Morocco's house.
Yeah.
I can remember it because it's incredibly uncomfortable because you had to sit cross-legged on the floor
Yes.
around this long table, you know, like you see
Yes.
in these movies. So, yeah, we got to do that. And in fact, I think we were travelling maybe like 40 different countries every year for many years.
Yeah. And I think people aren't always aware, Tim, of the wear and tear of some of that. Because how long was Delirious together?
From the beginning of what was called the cutting edge, that's those events we didn't see from, that was 17 years.
17 years, and a lot of that, a lot of travel. And you sometimes took all your families with you, didn't you?
Yeah, we had the great opportunities. Back in the good old days where you could take your kids out of school without getting into trouble too much.
And you're not getting fined.
Yeah, exactly. So we'd take the children out of school for 2 weeks at Easter and then the two-week Easter holiday. So we'd have a month. So for at least 10 years, my children, I've got 4 children, they grew up travelling and have visited every state in America, living on a tour bus. I think if you ask my children today, they're, now all grown up and got their own children, but they would say that's their fondest childhood memories, for sure, is being on the road with mum and dad. And it was a great experience.
And it was a season. It was a good season, and it was quite a long season, but it came to an end. And were you all in agreement, or was there a sense of disappointment?
No, I think it's, there's 5 people in our team in the band, and then obviously people around us. And you don't ever all wake up one morning and collectively think, today's the day I think we should talk about ending this. That doesn't happen, does it? That's not the reality.
No.
So I think, I think it was a shock in some ways, because also we felt a bit like we're this steam train, travelling at 100 miles an hour. It was very fast moving. It was very forward moving and quite visionary still about the future. So it was quite an abrupt halt it came to, and we had to figure that out because it was something we'd never done before.
Yes.
When we gave our jobs up years before, we hadn't done that before, and we went full time and did the band thing. But then when it came to the end, neither had we done that before either. So it's like, how do you now do that? What's the right process? How do we manage that in a way that honours God and everything that's gone around what's gone on? And not least of all, most of us were related. So the key thing in everything with us was at all times, like, we have to protect the relationships and put the relationships first.
Yes, because 3 of you in the band are married to 3 sisters.
Correct. Yes, that's
So
right. And their brother was also in the band.
And their brother was...
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so we had that, and that was fun because you go back to those days on the road with the kids. So that means all the kids are cousins, right?
Which is wonderful.
Yeah. So they grew up together doing that, and even today, many years since the band's finished, the cousins are very close. They're almost like siblings.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
One of the prayers that my wife Killy and I pray, Tim, quite frequently we pray this prayer: Lord, guide our steps and guide our stops.
Yes, that's a great prayer.
Because I think sometimes, we're always, Lord, guide our steps, but Lord, guide our stops. Show us when we have to stop something. And Delirious, the hand of the Lord was on Delirious and on that season of ministry, and it came to a stop. And often something has to stop before we can step into something.
It does, yes.
And that is exactly what happened. As God guided you, you were the founder of Big Church Day Out. Initially, I think it was called,
that's right,
but now it's the Big Church Festival.
Yeah.
But tell us the backstory to that.
Well, I was introduced to some people who, you and I both know as mutual friends, the Goring family.
They're lovely family.
Wonderful, wonderful Christian family, but real old money, own this country estate in Sussex. And the connection is, it goes back to those days on the seafront,
Yeah.
where I'd met a friend and we'd had a conversation around, I want to be like many years on to do something. This is back where we live, about gathering the church together and bringing everyone together to worship again. Should we try and do this? And this friend said, well, I know this family who own this land. We should go and see them. And I was like, well, all right, well, we can go and see them, but I'm at the time very busy with the band and we were travelling a lot and that kind of thing. So we went to meet the family on the estate, and the first question that Harry Goring, who owns the land, he said to me, I think he thought I was going to come and, do something like Glastonbury or
Yes.
something. He said, are there going to be tents at this thing? And I'm thinking, well, there isn't a thing, so I'm not quite sure.
No, I haven't thought that far yet.
No, I haven't really thought that far. I haven't really come with a plan. I've come to keep my friend happy.
Yeah,
and
I've come with a vision.
Yes, and then so I kind of threw it back at him, and I said, well, what would you think if there were tents on your land?
Yes.
He said, I'd love that.
Yes.
And then he started to explain about some of the prophetic words they'd had in this for their land, bearing in mind the family lived there nearly 400 years and never had anything apart from sheep out in their land and all the farms and everything like that. So I thought, well, this is interesting. And they had prophetic words about people coming and gathering, and part of that was people seeing tents on his land. So hence his question. And so one thing led to another, and this was just a month before I got the news the band was ending. So as soon as I heard the band was ending, I thought...
Yeah, so what's interesting there, Tim, God was already beginning to stir you.
Yes, it felt like a great God conversation. But I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I certainly didn't have more hours in the day. And as soon as I found out the band was ending, I thought, well, I went back to this conversation I had a month earlier. I thought, I really felt God was in that. And I'd never honestly ever had another conversation. I'd never had a plan B for 17 years about doing anything different. And I revisited the conversation with them. I said, do you know what? It's quite interesting because since we spoke, it looks like I might end up with a little bit more time on my hands than I thought. If God's in this, shall we see what happens? And we actually launched the Big Church Day Out as a one-day worship event, really. We had people like, I think we had Chris Tomlin, Michael W. Smith, Israel Howe, and then, of course, Delirious played in the first year, and that was in the same year that we ended. And we gathered, I think I was running the whole thing as we were travelling backwards and forwards all around the world. I was organising it on my laptop and planes. I had no team. And we'd sold 13,000 tickets, and I got panicked and thought, I don't even know how on earth we're going to manage that number.
Yeah, who's going to be the steward?
So I quickly said, this is sold out now. There's no more, please.
Yeah.
And then all these people turned up. And
where are we going to park the cars?
Yeah, it was all that. And then we booked some food vans, and most of them didn't turn up, and it was the hottest day in the year, and we had problems with traffic, and people were queuing, and it was kind of, in many ways, a disaster, but it felt like God had smiled on it.
Yes.
And
the kindness of God.
It was the kindness. And probably the bravest thing we ever did was to do the second year, not the first year.
No, but after the first year, you thought, no, there's something here.
Yeah, I think.
And people, churches, and not, small churches, as well as bigger churches, were looking for something to go and be inspired.
Yes, and I think obviously we had travelled around the world quite a lot for a number of years. And what I'd often seen is that a lot of the events we were invited to was somebody else's vision about seeing the church gather.
Yeah.
So that's not unique to the UK by any means. You see that all over the world, and sometimes far bigger scales than anything we're doing here. But so we've been part of many of those things, and I got excited by, wouldn't it be amazing if we could create a space where the church comes together? And really, it had that narrative initially, and then things grew, things changed. People started to bring their friends. We started to get all these stories. I'm bringing my mates. I'm bringing the wives are bringing the husbands who don't come to church. I'm bringing my neighbours. They're coming, people giving their lives to Jesus. And we're like, well, we just said, let's get together and have a picnic. And all of a sudden, we've created a space. And
and so now what was happening, you had the flock, but you now had the fringe and the beyond the fringe.
yeah,
And it was growing and growing and growing. And so in effect, it became even more evangelistic.
it did. And in fact, it had always been hosted, the main stage at the event. I mean, it's grown so much since then. For the first 10 or 12 years, it was hosted by Pete Gregg, who's a great...
Yes.
We've been friends for many
Yes.
years, going back to the old days on the beach together, where Pete used to come give the gospel and we'd baptise people in the sea. So I said, Pete, will you come and help host the event for me? And he kindly did. And I said, Pete, look, I'm getting all these stories about people becoming Christians. You better start giving the gospel.
Yes.
So we started doing that, and it just grew and grew from there. And I think in some ways we've never had this strategy of let's create an evangelistic event, where our strategy was let's create a great event.
Yes.
Let's make something that's so brilliant, that's such a wonderful experience that people want to bring their friends to so much.
And it gives them confidence to bring them to it.
Yeah.
Yes. And God uses a song to touch someone's heart.
I know, yeah.
And the worship and just being in a sacred atmosphere in God's creation.
So sadly, it didn't give a lot of space for wonderful preachers like yourself.
No. Well, I did ask you that just before the interview. What about the preachers?
Yes. So we're never very good at preaching.
Well, when you're ready to have a preacher, give me a call.
Yes.
But listen, it warms my heart, Tim, that it's an incredible environment to help people in their journey of faith. And it has grown. So in your last one, how many people gathered?
So the last one we had 35,000 came. Next year we'll have 40,000.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly exciting.
And obviously that's exceeded your expectations.
Well, I have a big vision. So I'm living with the 50, 100,000 down the road.
But when you first started, you were like, oh, well, Lord, just help me organise the first
absolutely.
one.
There was no plan. And in some ways, there's a sense of every year it's like, oh, do we go again then? Shall we go again? But we feel like God's in this somehow. And sometimes I often feel a little bit like Noah.
Yeah.
I feel like God's go and just build the ark. You don't need to figure out what's coming next beyond that. I've got a plan, but you just build the ark and do your thing. And sometimes I feel like God said to me, you just create the space and leave the rest to me.
Yes.
And so I tell you what, right now is such an exciting time and space to be in, because when you see what God's doing in the country, in the nation, particularly around this kind of revival conversation, around the Gen Z conversation.
Yes.
So last year, over half our crowd are that age group.
Amazing.
So we've got 35,000 people, of which over 20,000 are kind of in their 20s. Great. And they're all bringing their mates more than ever, because they have a confidence perhaps that we even didn't have when we were that age, to invite all their friends. And so I'm thinking like, now I get it. I get why we had to create a space, why we had to create something that felt brilliant, so that when God does all this, there's this move of God. Yeah, we've got somewhere that can kind of both contain it, albeit an event once a year, but to be a huge beacon really for the church in the UK right now.
Well, it definitely infuses in people faith, hope and love, and it helps people in their journey of faith. I mean, a lot of our staff all go. They all go. Yeah, every year they all go, and they come back just absolutely buzzing and raving, just encountering the Lord and being inspired. So it has become, am I right, Tim, the largest Christian festival in Europe?
I think in terms of something that happens annually, yes, it is. Because it's happening year on year, and we always wanted to do something that could grow and be, can bring your friends one year, they become Christians, and they bring their friends the next year. And I love what's happening around the unity piece. And, in some ways, yes, we don't have the preachers, we don't have all of some of those elements that some of these large events often have had. But we just want to create a space that kind of says, whatever your position, whatever your churchmanship, whatever your background, your theology, don't allow those things to polarize you ever from the rest of the body. Because our love for Jesus, the thing that's central to all of us, is more important than those things. So don't let those, let's just get together, let's feast, let's fellowship together. And what I love about Big Church at the festival is you'll see 40,000 people and you have not the faintest idea which church anyone's from. No one's wearing a label, no one's come with a badge on, no one's flying their flag for this movement or that movement. It's just the body just loving being together.
This year, Tim, who have you got coming? Tell us some of the participants that are going to come this year.
Oh, we have Cece Winans coming.
Oh, my.
We have Bethel Music coming. We have Elevation Rhythm coming. We have Lauren Daigle coming.
Oh, Lauren Daigle.
For King and Country coming. Goodness, I don't know.
Matthew West.
Oh, Matthew West. Yes, you're a Matthew West
who I
fan.
absolutely
Charity
love.
Gale.
Yeah.
She's coming. Wren Collective are coming. Gabriel Price. There's like 70 different artists every year across all these different stages. I can't even keep up with myself.
Would you know, one of my favourite quotations, Tim, is from William Carey, and he had a motto. He was a missionary, and his motto was, expect great things from God, attempt great things for God.
Wow, that's great.
And I love that. And you remind me so much of that motto, because you always expect great things from God, but you're also attempting great things for God. And that's wonderful, Tim. Honestly, it's great how the Lord has led you, how the Lord has used you, how the Lord is using you. And, keep on keeping on.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for all the encouragement.
Well, it's been a joy to have you on Facing the Canon. Thank you for joining us, Tim.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
I hope that has inspired you. I mean, honestly, I feel inspired just hearing a little bit of Tim's story. And can I encourage you, if you can go, take the time, make the effort to go to church, Big Church Festival, and be inspired in your own journey of faith. Thank you so much for joining us on Facing the Canon. Please join us again.